of Virtual Coffee. With me today are Rosario and Devraj, the founders of Siesta Wrap. These two friends founded their business when they were just in high school. They were traveling on a school bus in the early morning in the cold Chicago winter and needed a solution to help them sleep and stay warm. That's how Siesta Wrap was born. They are now headed to college this upcoming fall, and I'm really excited to see what amazing things they do with Siesta Wrap and beyond. This is a great episode, and before we dive right in, I'd really appreciate it if you could follow Virtual Coffee on social media, Instagram, Facebook, etc. It's all at Virtual Coffee Podcast. You could also take about 10 seconds to leave a review on the Apple Podcasts app. That would really help us out and I would really appreciate it. But with that, let's dive right into the episode this week. I'm really excited to hear from Rosario and Devraj, so let's get to it. Welcome, Rosario and Devraj. Thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today.
Thank you, Alexa. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. How are you guys?
Good.
Perfect. So let's kick things off right away and give our audience a taste of your company, Siesta Wrap. Maybe perhaps the founding story or even, just a little snippet of what you guys are and what you've created.
Perfect. Yeah, so Siesta Wrap started as kind of a high school adventure. Dev and I were heading down to Chicago, 1871 specifically, for a kind of pitch competition and entrepreneurship trip sponsored by our school. And on that ride, we were taking a bus. And of course, it was in the dead of winter and in Chicago, which meant it was cold and miserable. So as we were heading downtown, basically we were stuck in the bus, which was freezing cold. And we couldn't sleep. It was like 6:30 in the morning. We were just having a very, very bad time. And at that pitch competition, it kind of got us brought into the world of entrepreneurship. So when we got home later that day, we were just sitting in our dorm room and we were like, we need to do something about this.
Mhm.
And right then and there, we actually started sketching up the Siesta Wrap, which is our business now. And basically what the Siesta Wrap allows you to do is just kind of take a nap anywhere. It's made of an L-shaped pillow and an attached blanket. And it's really just perfect for taking around with you wherever you go.
That's just incredible. First, that you guys did this in high school, and I want to dive all into that and advice you have for others. But yeah, just incredible innovation. And describe the product a little bit more, right? Like when people listening want to go onto your website or perhaps purchase a Siesta Wrap, what can they expect? How can they use it?
Thank you for your kind words. Yeah, so the Siesta Wrap, it's basically, as was already mentioned, it's an L-shaped pillow, and it's a full-size pillow, but it's still pretty small, so you can take it with you anywhere. And the unique part about the L shape is that you can sleep laying down or sitting up against a wall. It's really comfortable. So in that sense, it's sort of a neck pillow, but you can also use it as a full-size pillow really comfortably. And what's unique about the Siesta Wrap is that a full-size blanket is stored inside of the pillow itself that you can pull out. And then once you're not using the blanket, let's say that you're on like a tight crowded bus or something and you can't have the blanket out, then you can just use it just as a pillow. But let's say you're going to your friend's house, spending the night there with them, or if you're just lounging at home on the couch, you can pull out the blanket for added comfort.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. I exactly like you're saying, great for road trips, airplanes, right? Like I'm envisioning all the situations where I need one. I just really want to dive into your journey of how this came to be, right? So I can totally understand, having an idea and like coming up with the idea or thought of the Siesta Wrap. Like that makes sense. People have ideas all the time, but how do you actually kick it off? Like where do you even get the supplies to prototype it, or did anyone help you? Like how does it come from, or how do you translate it from we have this idea in our brains to actually starting to create the product? What were some of those steps you took?
Yeah, it was a very, very long process. So the product we have now is made out of like a really nice fleece. It's stuffed with some of the best filling that is available. But when we started out, we didn't know that any of that really needed to be done. Our first prototypes were actually made at school in our dorm room, just using normal fabric from Walmart, filling that you could just buy from any craft store. And to put it simply, our first prototypes were more like crafts than anything
Sure.
else. They were, sewed together by hand. But I would say that the most important part about bringing our idea to an actual prototype was sketching it up on CAD, finalizing dimensions, and making sure that we actually knew what materials we needed to use was incredibly important. And when we eventually took that to a manufacturer, it made us look much more put together, and
Mm.
it gave them a much better idea of what we actually wanted to do. The process of actually putting together dimensions was also really interesting because we had access to a lot of students and a lot of people within our target
Ah,
market that uh, we could basically just test a bunch of different dimensions on. So we were able to really dial in, what are the perfect dimensions for a product like this.
that's great. Yay for user testing right at the beginning. So many companies, like corporations, just forget about that step, and it is so important. So good for you guys for doing that, like right off the bat. That is excellent. I liked your comparison that at first it was like a craft. And I think that is actually almost a good piece of advice because it helps people understand you have this idea and it's almost like the first try of just getting it out of your head, it doesn't really matter what it looks like, right? You're just like trying to put something together so you can start to visualize it. So
Oh
I
yeah,
yeah, I'm just glad you shared that and appreciate your honesty there.
that whole process. I mean, it just anybody who's starting a business, they need to keep in mind it's not quick. We
Mm,
probably put together between 40 and 50 prototypes.
right.
Just
Wow.
different manufacturing processes, different fabrics, different materials. But pretty plain and simply, it's a little bit of a mess, but you have to push through it to get a finalized product.
No, that makes sense. And Devraj, would love to hear from you about how this process was like while also going to school and I'm sure having other activities you're doing and extracurriculars. Like, what was that like balancing all that?
Sure. And Alexa, I'm glad that you brought that up. So Rosario and I, we were actually just two dorm rooms away from each other. We went to the Illinois Math and Science Academy. It was really nice for us because our school was residential. So whenever we finished with our clubs, our sports, our activities after school, we would just hit the dorm room, get all of our homework out of the way, and then just start working on Siesta Wrap, sometimes up until like 3 in the morning on weekdays.
Wow.
So we did sacrifice a lot of sleep to get CS Wrap off the ground and moving, but we also took the lessons that we learned from CS Wrap and created kind of our own entrepreneurship program at our school. We call it Total Applied Learning for Entrepreneurship. And Rosario and I put together a curriculum that kind of outlines all the steps that an entrepreneur needs to take to get a business off the ground. And I think we've helped a lot of our peers launch their own ventures at school as well. So most of our extracurriculars at school did revolve kind of around the whole business aspect. And I think we really found our passion in entrepreneurship that way.
That's so cool. You guys made a program basically out of your learnings and your experience. That's so excellent to want to share that with others and not just keep it to yourselves. So, at school, and you guys may have already mentioned this, but were you studying like business or entrepreneurship, or was that more of in the extracurriculars that you guys just kind of geared yourself towards because that was a passion?
It was definitely more towards the extracurriculars at school.
Okay.
And actually, it's interesting that you bring that up. Entrepreneurship, we never took any classes or did any online courses or things like that. We simply just tried things until they worked. So we really went through
Hmm.
testing process in our own business. One book that I do recommend for
Yeah.
all entrepreneurs is The Lean Startup. I think that's by Eric Ries, but don't quote me on that.
Okay.
That served as kind of the backbone for our business and getting it off the ground. That's where we learned the minimum viable product, kind of like the craft that Rosario mentioned. Our main goal was to just test out CS Wrap early as possible. So that's why we kind of sorted together by hand, not paying too much attention to the fabric or the threads or things like that, because we wanted to validate the idea as quickly as possible. And once we validated the idea, our friends loved it, then we sort of hit the ground running and then turned into a whole business.
Yeah, love that you brought up the lean startup because that's definitely something, we read at my work, at my company and there's best practices in there that we take and I'm just so happy for you guys cuz you guys are so ahead of the game and that's just awesome, right? Of course if someone figures out their passion for entrepreneurship and starting business when they're 70, like that's great too, but just to be so ahead and also being able to pass on your learnings to other high schoolers, to people your age to show them it is possible, right? It's hard. It's not easy, but it's possible. Anyone can get an idea out there if they really want to. And with that, and kind of going off the topic of sharing that resource of the lean startup, is there anything else you leverage, resources, books, podcasts, people that really helped you that you would recommend for others who are trying to get their business off the ground?
I would definitely be able to recommend people above all else. Networking on LinkedIn and social media, even a platform like Instagram is completely invaluable. And the people that we've met just over Instagram, for example, who have helped us out in our prototyping or marketing journey has been astounding. We definitely recommend anybody who has an interesting profile or kind of falls into the category you're trying to target. Just reach out to them, and if they don't respond, they don't respond. But if they do, you never know where that connection is going to go.
Yeah, and I'd love to add on to that. I think a lot of the things that we've seen in school regarding our peers is that people are not really willing to ask for help. There's like a reluctance in our society for asking other people for help, but there's nothing to be afraid of. The worst thing a person can tell you is no.
That is a great mindset to have. And exactly what you said, like the worst thing they can do is not answer or say no. And okay, like that's not a big deal, right? Like, okay, sure. Maybe there's a slight sting of rejection for a second, but then you just move on to the next person. Such a great mindset. And I'm currently reading Brene Brown's Dare to Lead, and she's talking a lot about vulnerability. And I think what you were mentioning about people having a reluctance to ask for help, I think a part of that is like being vulnerable, right? We don't want to come across as, oh, I don't know how to do this, or can you help me? But if we can kind of get over that and be brave and accept that vulnerability, then who knows, like who will be willing to help you. And right, like so many will just come and help and share their advice. You just have to ask first.
Yeah, and going off of that as well,
Yeah.
as entrepreneurs starting a business, you're expected to do everything because budgets are small,
Right.
and you're going out there on your own. But unfortunately, as human beings, we're not good at everything, and we do need to reach out to other people. And when we're reaching out, I don't think it's as much of a mindset of I need help or I can't do this. It's more of maybe my strengths lie in something else. I haven't had experience with this yet because everyone's good at something. It's just you may not be good at the particular thing that you're trying to go for.
No, I think that's a great point. And you almost can't be great at everything, or maybe you don't want to be great at, like, for example, the finances of running a business, right? And you'd rather like hire out for that or get advice or get help. And like, that's okay too. I think that's a great point you bring up of just understanding where your strengths are and where you want your strengths to be too. Excellent. And tell me more about this journey of launching Siesta Wrap. What were some of the major steps or challenges? I know we touched upon a few there, but what moments in your business journey really stand out to you? Like maybe one or two, or one from each of you. Would love to hear from you both. Just kind of those major steps or that pivotal moment. Just tell us about that.
Sure. So I think Alexa, our biggest moment was securing our patent application. So Rosario and I
Mm.
did file an application for a patent on Siesta Wrap on the design. And at that moment, we knew that our product was going to turn into not just a product, but also a business because we spent a lot of money on that patent. And it kind of kicked us into overdrive. It was a moment where we now have intellectual property and we need to utilize it, turn it into a revenue source. So I would say for me, that's definitely our biggest milestone and also one of like our greatest motivators is to recoup that cost.
Yeah, and some other challenges we faced on the product development side, very early on when we were testing our product with our peers, for every person that said it was a fantastic product, there may have been two of our peers who either didn't like it or thought it was a stupid idea that wasn't going to
Mm.
go anywhere. And facing that criticism early on is very, very demotivating. And
Right.
with all new ideas, there's going to be a significant amount of pushback because either people think it's silly or useless.
Mhm.
And pushing through that is really important because you may find yourself in a little bit of a bubble where that's possibly just not your target market. That's not the
Mhm.
people who are going to value your product. So pushing beyond that is definitely very important. And after that, we also kind of experience a bunch of manufacturing issues. In creating a new product, there is no right way to do it yet because you haven't figured it out. And those growing pains working with manufacturers are very common, unfortunately, and they can be costly. Our first manufacturer, for example, didn't necessarily work in the space that we thought they would, or we
Okay.
thought they did. And it was only after we had a production run go out that we realized that it was not what we wanted to sell. And recovering from that was a big issue. I mean, we basically had to take all the units that were made apart by hand and have them resewn
Wow.
somewhere else. So recovering from that mistake was definitely a very big learning process
Hmm.
for making sure that you're finding the right people to do what you want to do.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
It was about a month of Rosario and I just together in my basement, taking these apart by hand,
Wow.
having conversations. Like it's been about 100 hours to take those units apart.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, well, one, congrats on the patent. That's a huge accomplishment and definitely an amazing moment there. And yeah, it sounds like a lot of, just trial and error in many ways. How you were saying, maybe finding the exact market you're going after or the people who will really value and want to purchase your product, just trial and error there, and then trial and error with the manufacturers. And yeah, is really about not not giving up, right? And if you really believe in your idea and you have a few folks in your corner, like suddenly that starts to grow. It's just kind of pushing through those challenges, which it definitely seems like, again, you guys have a great mindset and are just pushing through, right?
Thank you. Thank you.
More of a logistical question. Just wanted to know, where are you able to ship your siesta wraps?
Yeah, so our CS wraps are being made and distributed through a company called Bean Products in Chicago. So basically, we're just able to send them our fabric and some of our materials, and they're actually able to sew and distribute for us. So that
Oh,
means
great.
everything's made right here in the United States, and we're not outsourcing any of that labor to possibly unsafe working conditions.
Wonderful, wonderful. Always love to hear that as well. And where are you hoping to take Siesta Wrap, and also your future? So, would love to hear again from both of you on this. But yeah, that first question being kind of where you see the future of this company, and then where you see your futures. Is it pursuing Siesta Wrap until forever, or until you have that next adventure, or is it, we're going to do Siesta Wrap for a few years and then go to college or not go to college and pursue our business ideas? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, definitely. So Rosario and I are both going to be entering our undergraduate in August, so in this coming month. And we are actually studying completely opposite things that aren't related to business or entrepreneurship. Rosario is studying mechanical engineering. I'm studying
Okay.
neuroscience. So that's kind of where our actual educational passions lie. However, we really do enjoy Siesta Wrap, but I think there
Hmm.
is sort of a end date, whether that means the business will be running fully autonomously, maybe like 10, 15, 20 years down the line, or
Sure.
if we do take a buyout offer, that's quite uncertain. As of right now, we just want to grow it to a point where it's where it has that sort of snowball effect and it keeps rolling down the hill, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. Once it's accumulated some pretty good traction, then we would look into those options. But for now, we're just going to keep plowing through.
One thing we've learned is that we just obviously you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
So our mindset now is that we're just going to stick with it until something happens,
Hmm.
until something changes.
Yeah, that sounds like a great plan to me. Do you mind, or I ask where you're going to undergrad?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm actually going to be studying in California for my first year, and then my friend
Nice.
is going to be studying right here in Chicago.
Oh, fun. Well, congratulations. Yeah, it sounds like, to your point, just continuing to pursue Siesta Rap as much as you can and seeing where you can take it. That's great that you guys plan on. It sounds like keeping still pursuing it even while in college.
COVID has taught us that it's kind of just taught us how to work remotely and that we don't
Yeah,
necessarily need to be in person for everything. And
true.
even being at opposite ends of the country, I think Deb and I will be able to handle it like we've been handling it.
For sure. Yeah, that's a great point about the pandemic. It's just so many people, I think, have realized that you can really get a lot done and not be in the same room. Definitely benefits of being in the same room, but definitely not impossible to be, like you said, like separate parts of the country. So,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
What lessons or things are you taking away from your journey with Siesta Wrap that you think will help you as you begin undergrad?
I would say the first of which is it's okay to make mistakes because
Hmm.
we have definitely made our fair share of mistakes. And then I think the second one would be that there's just not going to be one person or one situation that's going to fix everything. For a while we were looking for the individual who is going to get us into retail and solve all of our problems. But unfortunately it doesn't work like that.
Right.
And when it comes to taking advice, we found that it's better to consult, at least for the time being, it's better to consult a bunch of different sources and kind of tie those together to figure out where you're going to go.
And then I think another lesson that I would carry from CS Rep is that it's okay to pause certain tasks and put things on hold to achieve things that will actually push you towards your goal. Like once you have a goal defined, like for example,
Yeah.
Rosario have a goal to eventually push into retail. Some things can be put on hold that we might not have the time or money for to get us closer to that retail goal. Like for example, right now we are trying to fundraise for a trademark, but that's a little bit out of our reach at the moment. So we're pausing that to focus more on marketing, for example.
Right.
So it's okay to put certain things on hold because trying to do everything at once is not going to be productive. And I think that's the case as well in college and while studying. Is you can't do everything. Just do what you can and make sure it's meaningful.
For sure. And all the points you brought up, I think not only are helpful for folks in high school, college, but really any age. I mean, I just think the lessons you learn of, starting your own business, running your own business, there are just nuggets in there that you can apply to anything. Like, even if you guys never run another business again because it's just not where your life leads or where your passions take you, the lessons from Siesta Wrap will just propel you and accelerate you, and no matter the path you lead to. Do you
I
find that true as well?
Absolutely. I think kind of the best example of that has just been in our kind of contracting with either manufacturers or lawyers to help us achieve what we want to achieve.
Hmm.
I almost didn't realize how easy a connection can be made in the professional world. Finding a manufacturer, finding a lawyer is as easy as going on Google and making a few phone calls. And
Yeah.
vetting those people to ensure that you can actually work with them is also an incredibly important skill. And I think it definitely transfers into personal relationships and relationships of any sort. And business has a very unique contractual agreement around relationships. And I think that can definitely be beneficial outside of, the world of business as well. Regardless of who it is, every relationship needs to have boundaries and an understanding at a certain point. And I do think that working in business helps you make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page in relationships.
And to summarize in one word, I guess that can all be summarized by the word communication. CS Rap has taught us how to effectively communicate amongst ourselves, amongst others, amongst our customers, amongst our back end support and things like that.
So that's amazing. And yeah, I loved how you phrase that as effective communication, because I think there's definitely lessons in there to learn, the level at which to be transparent, the level at which to communicate, when it's appropriate to communicate with who and when. Like, there's so many intricacies in there that it definitely sounds like you guys are figuring out and succeeding in. So that's awesome. Did you guys find that because you started Siesta Rep when you were in high school, was that a challenge or more of a benefit? Like, what way did that lean?
There was definitely pros and cons to starting a business in high school.
Yeah.
I would say it's actually been relatively easier to make connections because people have had a lot of respect for us to start something that gained traction so quickly, especially at a young age. So we're really thankful for that, and that's allowed us to sit at some pretty big tables so far. The major cons of starting a business in high school, one, obviously the time constraint, because as a high schooler, you have to get good grades, do extracurriculars,
Right.
apply to colleges, things like that. So the time was definitely a constraint for us. At the very beginning, there was also a constraint of fundraising, which thankfully wasn't as much of a constraint because our parents did believe in us and we did manage to raise money from external sources, and we both are actually working right now. to fund Siesta Wrap ourselves. But in terms of the people, the connections, and things like that, I would never say that we've been discredited because of our age.
I will say, in working virtually, you can kind of choose when,
Huh, yeah.
you know, when to bring it up and when maybe
Right.
not to bring it up. And in the case of making new connections with possibly marketing contacts or customers or things like that, it's a fantastic point to bring up. When it comes to possibly legal matters or manufacturing, it's more of a detail that can be left out because it's not very important. And I think that there's
Right.
possibly a stigma that comes around that. And at a certain point, I understand why, because I wouldn't necessarily expect a teenager to pay all their bills on time. But on the flip side, we are teenagers who pay all of our bills on
Right.
time and make sure that we do have a mutual understanding with the people that we're working with.
I love both of your answers because I think the fact that you guys started this in high school and, are still fairly young, I think there are certain circumstances, correct me if I'm wrong, where that you can leverage that. Like, hey, look at us. We're young entrepreneurs, like help us out. Like in certain situations, that's very helpful because people want to help young entrepreneurs. But
Of
then
course,
to your point, knowing when to leverage that and when to not say it, because you're exactly right. Why does it even matter? Even in my corporate job, we tell the newcomers onto the team to not say to clients or people we're working with, oh, this is my second week on the job. It's like, that doesn't matter. We hired you for a reason. You are here because we believe in you, and who cares if it's your second day or your fifth year? It doesn't matter. Where I've seen it again in my corporate job, where I actually encourage our interns to leverage the fact that they're interns, because people tend to perk up and be like, oh, an intern, awesome. Like, I want to get to know you. Maybe you'd be a good fit for my team. Like, that makes them almost
that's
perk
true.
up when they see that. So I just love both of your answers because I think it highlights the importance of like picking and choosing when to leverage that fact.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's interesting. Excellent. Well, I think my last question, again, definitely want to hear from both of you on this. And I end every episode with this, is just in this moment, what is your proudest accomplishment? And it can totally be Siesta Wrap or it can be on a completely different topic. Just kind of that first thing that comes to mind when I ask you what your proudest accomplishment is so far.
So, as we mentioned earlier, we are very, very proud of all of our intellectual property that we've
Mhm.
gone for so far. Seeing the company name on a piece of paper with our names next to it, I guess is somewhat vain, but it kind of resembles something a little bit greater. It's a formal recognition that you have a unique product and a unique
Yeah.
idea, and that you're working for something. I would say beyond that, I think my personal biggest accomplishment would just be how I've grown with Siesta Wrap. Siesta Wrap went from kind of being a side project to being my entire life, and every hour that I pour into it is just develops something new.
Mhm.
Every time that I see a finished version of our product just lying around my house, like I smile a little bit because
Mm.
I feel bubbly inside that that's my product. Like it's there, it's real.
Yeah.
So yeah, my biggest accomplishment would be the business.
And adding on to that, I think it's really rewarding to see something tangible. Like seeing that first online order go through, like Rosario and I shared a phone call. And this was when we were both like at work and we were like, oh my gosh, our first online order. So
Yeah.
it's tangible moments like that make all the hours, all the sweat equity completely worth it.
Yeah, that's just so, again, so great to hear. And congratulations on everything you've accomplished so far. And I'm so looking forward to following your journeys and where you take Siesta Wrap, or if you start another business, or where you end up. I think it'll just be, you will clearly go incredible places. So congratulations on everything you've accomplished so far.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, of course. And before we wrap up our time here today, where can people find you and Siesta Rap? Social medias, website, shout them all out.
Absolutely. So the best place to find us is at our website, which is www.siestarep.com. Beyond that, our Instagram is very, very popular, and I recommend you go check out our content there. And then besides that, we can be found on Facebook, Etsy, LinkedIn, and Google.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Rosario and Devraj, for chatting with me today. Awesome, awesome conversation. One of my favorite episodes, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Alexa. Yeah,
Alexa.
it's been great.
It's been an amazing experience for us as well.